for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumine, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me here today. As you can see, I'm in a new environment. It is still an adjustment phase for me, so I'm finding it a little difficult and odd to find a location where I'm just myself alone, because there's way more people here, and I haven't developed my own strategy yet. I haven't really connected to my sacred spots yet, so it's still, like I said, it's an adjustment phase. My videos are not as frequent as of yet, but I've recently experienced a profound shift, and it was a major breakthrough. And I just want to tip the top of the iceberg with the first two videos I want to share with you guys. And they're really important as of what I'm noticing and going through myself. So today I want to start with explaining a little bit about the experience of Christ, because as you know, I've been on this journey as of the late. It's been a journey of a few months of leaving the old, coming into this new, and there was a little bit of the transition in between. And in that transit period, I was learning a lot about the human psyche, and at the same level, it was reflecting back to me my ancestral and old patterns, and the patterns of, you know, the human psyche alone, and how they are, for me to digest them from within. So it was like the journey of the fool, and I keep seeing that as me blindfolded and going with the sword of truth onward, and not knowing what's there to be faced. And yet still it's like guides are pushing you from behind the scenes, and they're like, just go, you know. And at the same time, it's not like something that you're waiting for as an outside guidance. It's something that you're driving forth as your own experience. So the inner Christ starts to pour through into the world at large, right? So the first thing I want to mention today is I recently came across this man sharing about the importance of questioning ourselves, right? Everything that's happening is a reflection of our reality, which we already know. We've been talking about this before. And everything in the reality shows us where we are, how we can be more awake, how we can become more conscious, what patterns are still harboring within ourselves. And even though sometimes we may feel, well, we've given so much to others and clearly it hasn't paid off, or this isn't working, that isn't working. But in truth, this journey is an inward set path that we've kind of encoded for ourselves. We already know that, right? So it's like we're walking the journey at the same time while we're imprinting ourselves. We're decluttering and deprinting from all the other aspects of life that are external, like experiences of, as you know, control, manipulation, and many levels of beings. So I want to talk about that in the next video, but today I just want to focus more on the experience of life itself, because as I was walking this journey, I came to a point of such major humility when all the teachings, everything, not just outside teachings, you know, but basically my internal knowing that I've been harboring and developing for 10 years now, especially in the last 7 years when I was an alpine mountain hermit, a mountain goat, it was like nothing mattered anymore. It was like life became my greatest teacher. The experience of Christ is my only teacher. So life is the only contact we truly have, what we call the Christ. It is the direct experience. It's no longer connected or corded through something else or someone else or an idea or an ideology. So I'm going to the simple sharing because recently someone said to me something, you know, we often come across in our world, people going from one exploration realm to the other, or from one extreme to the other. You know, we've all been through that. But there's examples of people who went from New Age teachings automatically now to Christ, but through Bible, right? Through gospel that we know as Bible. And those of us who've been really conscious and receiving like galactic updates, we understand that Bible has been coerced, it's been modulated, and since the Council of Nicaea, we know that there were specific men, the dark priesthood, that developed, and they said, we're going to put only this and that, but we're going to hide the rest. So the Bible that we know as it exists right now is a book. It's not a legislative work, truly. It's not a work of highest honor. So recently someone said to me, I came across Bible again, and I started to read it. And there's these beautiful teachings from Jesus there. They're so pure, and they're the only real truth. And everything else from the false light is so complicated. So I'm actually calling all else, like I'm rejecting all other teachings. I'm only embracing this because it's the only truth and what Jesus taught as a human on earth. Let me tell you that. Well, Jesus wasn't the only Christ being on earth, first of all. Bible isn't truly, like I said, a work of true honor. We say it's the divine word of God. Even though it was written by men, and everyone on earth that comes with a specific purpose and mission to share a little bit of that which is of the higher nature, right? Like awakening through the self, awakening ourselves, and with our own awakening, assisting others. Because like that man said, which I recently came across, he said, if we believe others need to be awake, we're dreaming ourselves. Because we're fooling ourselves, because in truth, we're the only ones needing to be awake and work on the inner. So that is how we start asking these questions and putting these question marks on our statements of the mind, which is the lesser, the lower mind that still filtrates things and says, well, this shouldn't be happening and that shouldn't be happening. Like when I went through the most difficult trials, I was saying, I shouldn't be this sick. I shouldn't have the experience with these fallen beings. I shouldn't be moving like 4, times in a row. It's too much. It's too intense. But when you really understand that, we don't know if that's the truth, and the only truth is that which is now, we come to a realization point that even with all the Gospels, with all the Holy Word, whatever it is, the most direct source of knowing is our life experience as it is right now. It's the greatest teacher. So I was saying something like, imagine all the scriptures, even the holiest of ones, the most sacred works of God word or something. What if they were, imagine a giant laser coming in and burning off all these books, and we're left with nothing. And we would think as humans, wow, we've lost our connection to the divine. The Bible no longer exists. How can I recreate this experience now that I have when I'm feeling peace when I'm reading the Bible? How can I recollect the memory of what this person we knew as Jesus was saying? Remember again how many times I've said there is an idea, there's an imprint of Jesus and an actual being, Jesus Christ, but in his higher realm, even a different name, right? So much has been imprinted upon this planet that we're not really sure of. So when we say things like, well, it's the only word of God, it's the only truest word of God, again, it's something also to question. Not just our own mind conclusions about ourselves, but also about the world at large and what we perceive as divine or not, or for our path or not. I really understand that there are certain things we need on our path. But to say in general, this is the only truth and everything else is false and it's too complicated and it's a false light. I talk about the New Age as well. And there is such a movement coming from the dark forces to confuse, to distort, to manipulate all that is sacred, because in truth it is simple, but there's also aspects of knowledge that's rather complex, because the more we become diverse and multidimensional, the higher nature of complexity starts to exist within us, and we start to develop experiences based on more complexity, like organisms starting with the simple life organisms and then developing into multiple functioning organisms of life. So our experience of life as light is the most innate, most direct source for us, how we experience the Christ. And Christ has certain essences and values. They become values in our external world. So the intrinsic becomes the outer. And the problem is when we classify and say this is it, this is not. Yes? And it's still very difficult for me to watch that behavior in people, because they think that, okay, just because now I'm feeling this and before I felt like crap, this must be the only truth now. So I'm only going to focus on that. And we become, with the horse. I like the horse with those, what are they called? I only know it in my language. But the horse only sees like this. So our vision becomes distorted and narrated, like guided. And that's what actually the church as religion, not just the original doctrine, wanted us to think. So this has actually nothing to do with the Christ. It's our inner experience of life itself, life becoming holy through us birthing ourselves as the purest form. So in my case, and going through my trials and my tribulations and my journey of the star being on earth, the light being on earth, it's like the only experience that is truth for me is what I'm feeling, what I know right now, because I'm perceiving it directly. There's nothing pulling me. There's nothing enticing me, not even what I would call the holiest word. And to come to such a level of immaculate direct connection, we're going to also talk about it in the next video, is really, really, it goes against that rebellion of us, going through stages and phases of our perceived maturity at different levels and saying, this is it. And then we come to the next stage, well, this is it now. The problem is filtering and saying this or that, instead of saying, wow, this was my experience, but I no longer need that. So I'm going to explore this now, because the exploration of life is the most natural way to get to profound inner awakenings, which are the most important and only important awakenings for us. So for me, going through this journey, if I didn't go into the kind of narrative of life that I did, taking the sleep jump, which I know a lot of people judge because they think that if you go through difficulties and challenges, you must not be so awake as you say yourself or claim yourself to be. And I never did anyway. I claimed to have a certain knowledge, which was always direct through me. It came through me. That was it. It was my absolute truth in that moment, that knowing that I received so purely from my own spirit being, and then channeling it, exploring it, and then sharing it with others who might be inspired by that. But let me tell you, everything that comes from the outside, even what I share, are simply guidelines. They're not your own personal direct experience of Christ, and they never will be. So, when in the modern Christianism they say, oh, through Jesus you have to become awake and initiated and then ascended. And in some Christian versions, there even isn't such a thing as ascension. It's false light to ascend. I mean, what did Jesus really truly teach anyway? Ascension in its purest physical form. So, so much of distortion still playing out and just different facets of life, because when we don't want to see a certain aspect of the shadow or something that we value in life as too weird, too difficult, too much to digest, too much to process, we're going to put it on the side burner and say, well, that must not be the truth because it's just too weird. And it's how we don't grow. Remember, Osho used to say that he cannot promise anyone anything but eternal growth. Growth is this constant step. There is no final destination. You come to a certain point and you say, wow, I've achieved it. And you haven't, because he said, poor is a man who finds his final destination. Because what's now left to do? Nothing, right? Poverty inside. No further exploration. So what I'm also noticing is people are so afraid to take upon life, to risk living life through choices, making leap jumps, deciding upon simple things that perhaps there are aspects of their life that no longer feel right, but they're still persisting in those aspects because they think, well, there's just somewhere I am and want to be. And they mistaken passivity, being passive, with being in flow. Flow is surrendering, but you still have to do the work. You still have to walk the walk and, walk your talk, literally. In Gabriel's Gospels, the true teachings of Jesus, he literally says the simplest truth: pray and then live. Pray and act. Our life is the greatest prayer there is. It's the holiest prayer is our life, living it fully, openly, in a surrendered way, exploring life as little children. So however old of a soul you consider yourself to be, put that mask off for a while maybe, because when I took my leap jump, I actually left my 7-year queendom, and I'm not saying I'm a queen, but in that domain, it was my personal bubble, which I called my queendom, my elven life. But it still existed in a more vertical sense. I used my pillar to anchor the knowledge that came through my oversoul and my spirit being, my spirit mother, which we're going to talk about in the next video. And I used that to master myself from within. It was an intrinsic process I had to go through. It was my journey towards Christ in a direct way. I had some guidelines too. Sometimes a book came, and I didn't even always read the whole book if it came in my life at that specific point. Or people used to come and say, well, you should read that because it's so good. Again, the projection of my experience onto yours. So our journey of getting into our own inner Christhood is so unique. It's so passionate when it's really lived from within, and it requires the steps of preparation, planting the seeds, mastery, walking certain paths that are really unknown. So for me, what I'm seeing now is I had to go from that pillar vertical assertion into the next stage, because otherwise my growth would be nullified. There wouldn't be any more left because I've done my work there. And recently I've shared the latest video about the portal work closing there. It is what it is. I still love that place. But recently we had this beautiful session with Master Jesus, and he's just one of my friends. You know, I don't think of him as, I always tell him, I don't see you as the only master, but I love you. You're so beautifully unique. You're amazing. And he knows that because he wants that. He understands the numerous amounts of experiences. So just to assume that now what is of the new age is all the new age would again be foolish from us. I mean, come on, people, wake up. Not everything that has new novelty and newness to it is of the new age. We have to learn to be open and receptive, because otherwise we're being deceived, by deceptive covert techniques and, different ways of how we as humanity are being preyed on. But we have to allow these openings, and by simply assuming it's all false, it's easier, right? Because I have just this guideline. We stop being multidimensional. We stop processing on multiple levels at the same time, which is what Christ is. Remember again, the first Son of God, which means the inner child within, the child of life through which your own innate beingness was created. That's what it means. Not Jesus is the first of the first and the only and the last, and there is no other. It's so stupid to think of life in this way. So our own Christhood and experience is simply allowing life to guide us. It is fullest through life force mastery, which I was teaching for so many years, and I still continue to walk the talk of this teaching. It's not just a vertical pillar now. But literally, let me tell you, in my own experience, as you've seen it, I had to walk my talk because that stage ended, that cycle ended. I had to be pushed out of my bubble, and I had to learn more about people. I had to meet certain people. I had to meet certain experiences. Experiences were guiding me into embracing aspects of myself that before I wasn't even paying attention to because I was focused on this. I'm not saying I was only vertical. I was never just the vertical being, but it was a more vertical set of the mission. And now my training is very different. But in this last channeling we did with Jesus, I asked a simple question. Where would I be if I still remained there? If I didn't make the leap jump and moved out, unknowingly where I would even end up? Not knowing it would have to be 4 times, which I say people still judge in that matter, thinking, well, you don't know how to live life. Look what you created for yourself. I'm not going to allow people to talk to me or even think that about me, because that's stupid, truly. To think of someone in any way that you think is the truth for them, right? It's simply rendering the experience that you didn't even have yourself. It's really nonsense. So just think about it, how brave we truly are when we allow the Christ to become through us, and we become the Christ through embracing life fully. And that's what I'm noticing now. It was very difficult for me to let it go. But just as Jesus said, you would be still a poor little victim in those circumstances and the dark energies that were holding me there in place. And I thought, well, but couldn't I, thinking as a master, like I need to master this, I need to break through in the environment that I was, not go somewhere else. But it wasn't running. He said, when a master knows this is no longer the right set of circumstances, a master leaves. And I'm not saying a master of any other experience but your own, right? Claiming your own sovereign domain. And he says, that's what the master knows. Not pushing yourself and controlling yourself, thinking, well, but I should have made a breakthrough here and there in that way. Now I'm not a master because I've chosen this way. A master knows how to create the right set of circumstances to design its fastest route towards shifting the experience. And sometimes we call it shifting the shit. It is what it is in the human realm. So for me, if I didn't digest all of those experiences, which I'm now doing, and realizing that even though I love that place to death, and you were able to see it in the previous video, how much I had to mourn and process over it. And now I'm good. I'm fine now because I've done the work. I've processed. I grieved. And then I realized through this latest session, I had to love myself more than I loved the place. Because a place, what is it truly a place, right? It is a piling up, a conglomeration of specific elements, elementals, which makes a specific landscape, topography, different biodiversity, different sets of plants, of, everything that we know as in a living nature. But a true master needs to make a choice for the self first. And they know they're going to recreate not the same experience, but they're going to recreate the Christ in a new form, in a new way, because they've chosen to experience the Christ directly through experiencing life and not running away from life. Because I know a lot of people who are running away from life directly, and they don't like to be confronted with life. They don't like to be confronted with others through others. They're escaping the set of circumstances that actually their soul designed for them to wake them up even more. And they're refusing. And I met different kinds of individuals. But I want to tell you, recently I also had an amazing experience, and I do have to check the clock though, because I have to go soon. I have a massage. I'm so excited. I didn't treat myself for such a long time. And what happened was, we just yesterday, we had to go to our previous location because I left a whole pack of my winter clothes there in a closet. I'm like, what the heck? But let me tell you, there are no mistakes. There are absolutely no mistakes, which I've seen yesterday while returning down from the hills. And it was pouring rain, and it was an amazing feeling. There was such a luminous breakthrough happening. And what really occurred was I realized what perfection life is. How did I myself design all these steps, every single one of them perfect? So when I came back there, and we were there again, as always, several hours doing readings and coffee readings and talking. And I was looking at the person, right, which I shared a little bit about the challenge that I've seen in them and with the imprint they receive from that dark energy. And I'm looking at them and I tell them, wow, you have such a glow about you. What is this? And at first I didn't get it. I was just looking at her like, what is this? You're glowing. And she's still experiencing certain challenges, so she didn't see that herself. And I'm telling her, you are different. She says, well, my life's still the same. And I'm saying, no. And then we leave. And what happens, I get the message that dark energy is no longer present with her. And so when I was hugging her, I felt like it's just her now. Because before I always felt like this third energy. And it was kind of like a little bit of that repelling, right? Trying to come in between us even. And remember when I told you I received an initiation to do pulsar per distance if the soul asks me. If the soul asks me, then I'm permitted to do so, even if the ego of the person would say, no, I'm gonna do that. And that is so rare, and it happens in very specific occasions. And that's trusting life. That's trusting guidance. That's choosing yourself and knowing that the Christ operates through you, period. There is no scripture in which you would read about that, because it's so new, and there isn't any scripture that would tell you, yes, these are the manuals here, this is how you do it, or should you, shouldn't. In that moment when you receive that guidance, you have to make a first choice call. It has to be an instant decision. So we were doing a reading and she tells me, you always do very hasty, quick decisions. And I'm thinking, yeah, but when I do them, it's not in a human, non-thought through kind of way. I just know, I feel the impulse of life. If I feel life running through, I'm like, yeah, I'm set to go. Just let's do it. And I know I've been setting myself for a fall for quite a long time. And I told you that's why I didn't move for so long. But I was just waiting for the right moment. And at a certain point, even that moment came. And it's all designed, like I said, through our being. We only have to cooperate willingly, allow, be non-forceful, and at the same time be proactive. So I'm thinking this is amazing, because what happened, I had this animal spirit totem twice. And it was, what's it called in English? I forgot now. Oh, I forgot the word. Anyway, the little cute animal that kind of climbs like this in the forest when it's rainy, with the yellow spots. Oh, I know, I'm out of it right now. I'm going to think of it later. So anyway, I see that one first time picking up mushrooms, and it's looking at me and it's climbing towards me. And then I read about the symbology, how much he assists you with transformations. And then I'm just leaving yesterday in the hills, and we needed to get the clothes from the lower apartment. And we opened the door and it was dark. I didn't see, the light flashed me, and I step on something with my left foot and it was like, I'm like, oh no, is this a frog? What is this? Oh, because it was raining, it was all wet. And I looked down, oh, it's another one. Oh my goodness. And I didn't kill it, right? He was still, happily climbing. and crawling. Salamander, duh, right? And I couldn't believe that. And it was such a clear message that this is done now. Because remember, I got 3 scorpions, symbols, totems. And the last one was on my birthday when I went to the crystal cave again. For the 3rd time, I was literally browsing for stones, and I dug it up. I'm like, oh, look at another one, the 3rd one, and I've never seen them before, and 3 in just 2 months. And it was another clear indication, right? And now this. And then we're driving down the hills, and all messages start coming through about the work I've been doing. So basically, I had to drive myself there. I literally intentionally, a part of me knew I had to forget that to come back, to pay a visit, to see the change. And it wasn't even 1 month time yet. And I saw my own reflection of my action, of Christ in action, when I received that impulse and I did the work. I did the pulsar with the identity, with the entity, and I saw the result, and I was the happiest being. You should have seen me yesterday driving down the hills again, like, yeah, I can't believe this, I can't believe my power. I was so happy, and I'm still happy. And I have moments, as you know, as everyone, when you doubt, when you don't know, when you're uncertain, but then you design a specific journey, this own Christ language within you that guides you in another specific direction, that shows you everything is always right and right on target. But if you're one of those people who never fully trusted yourself and your choices and your calls, and you're still kind of deflecting reality in that way, and you don't want to learn from it, you're always going to find a new excuse, a new religion, a new set of circumstance, a new relationship, a new friend, or you're going to stay always trapped in the same and saying that's all there is. You know, there's different ways that the human psyche operates. But I've learned that when I stop being in that fear of that change, and, you know, I sometimes feared, like, how would people take me if I'm just really me in a raw format? I was always this kind, nice person in an approach. I didn't use that assertive me, except with my mom, because I'm cozy and comfortable with her, because she's so unconditional. But with other people, I was always like wearing a little bit of the mask. And meeting these people showed me. And one of the most important realizations was, I don't need to rescue anyone. I didn't come here for that reason. Even with the volunteer soul tag, it's still just a tag. It's not so monumental. It's just a little something we do. But it's done through our presence. Our presence alone is enough. Our inner awakening is enough. Our own light encodingness, our own journey. And everything else is a pattern. And I did get that imprint, and even with those controlling beings, like, I need to rescue others. I always need to be there for others. I need to always be the one bringing them this beautiful love. And often it was at expense of myself. So what I'm learning now is what I shouldn't learn before, but I didn't, because I was always like sharing everything I had and received, is now I'm going back to myself, to my roots, and really doing everything with more consciousness, with more presence, with more Christ within. Still human, still the same, more integrated now, as you can see. I'm no longer somewhere lost in the mountains. It's 50-50, right? It's a little bit of the hybridization playing out here. But it's different. I feel more alive. I feel more myself than ever before. So next part will be in the next video, where I'll explain and go deeper. We're going to talk about the mother spirit and how to understand there and get there. But, oh, someone has a massage to come to. So thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video. And as always, so much love, wisdom, and power. Okay? See you soon. Bye. So much love.